Good afternoon. We started off with a challenge yesterday, and the challenge revolved around the concept, can eco-design be mainstreamed? And we thought back to sort of early 70s when Victor Papanek designed for the real world and said, okay, where are we now? Why hasn't design moved forward? Why aren't we embracing environmental and social responsibility? Where is the role of designers in moving forward this agenda? And can designers in Ireland, and can Ireland lead the way? So to start this process, the first thing I want to do is ask Simon, how do you think eco-design can be mainstreamed?
Well, I suppose, again, it was quite a broad question. It was a little bit vague, but we tried to initiate a process where we could actually start to explore these issues. So I just want to go through it a little bit now. And again, like some of the discussions earlier on, it isn't very linear and it bounced around. But these are kind of the key areas that informed our process or underlined what we were actually doing. So when we were looking at the question, we sort of said, can we actually rethink and deconstruct the question about what is good design and what is eco-design? And we spent quite a lot of time in terms of trying to brainstorm and looking at the various issues and what's wrong with design and what's good with design, what are the things we want to preserve and what are the things we want to get rid of. And that then allowed us to form a context for how we're going to try and achieve to mainstream eco-design. And because a lot of the discussion is about collaboration, obviously it's about involving people. So the next step is to sort of say, okay, well, can we actually look? The typos are free. Can we look at a particular place, or looking at that particular context, and looking at the organisations, peoples, and communities within that particular context to see how we can kind of bridge between those various communities, and whether those communities of practice have the capacity to affect change. And then from identifying the various stakeholders or various communities or communities of practice within that particular context, then can we inform and develop projects, site-specific projects that relate to that particular area. And because we were possibly going to be looking at a context, and the idea is how do we make it mainstream, is the idea that all the projects that we actually have to have a look at, are they scalable, are they transferable? So that's kind of really just very briefly the process that informed the discussions and the activities that we did.
Okay, so we've heard about the process. So next thing, Paul, is I'm going to ask you is how can we mainstream eco-design?
Well, it brought up the question of what is mainstream and what is eco-design, what do we understand that to mean? Because there are different perceptions from different stakeholders as to what those words mean. Eco-design, for some stakeholders, is seen as expensive. It's expensive in terms of time. It's seen as expensive in terms of money. It can be seen as limiting. It's restrictive of design. It can be restrictive of choice. Again, this is not necessarily true. These are perceptions. It can be seen as uncool, hippie, tree hugger, unsexy. It can be seen as being cheap or of lower quality. For some professional stakeholders, it can be seen as technically complex. There's too much technical information required, which is overwhelming for me as a designer. There is a lack of awareness of the potential benefits. It can be morally challenging for some people. It can also elicit different emotional responses. For some people, it elicits emotions of disgust, anxiety, fear, discomfort, ridicule. The thing is, values underlie all of those perceptions. So the question is, what are the different values of the different stakeholders? When you dig underneath that, you then start asking, well, what is a value? A value is a combination of beliefs, experience. It's how you form your view of the world. So the question I pose is, first of all, what are the beliefs that underpin the different stakeholders' view, their perceptions? How can we change those beliefs, thereby change their values, thereby change their perceptions, and in doing so, bring eco-design to the mainstream?
Thank you, Paul. So we've had the process and we've had the values. So Barry, what do you think the next step is in terms of mainstream design?
Okay, well, one of the problems is, if you look at this particular area and look at the context of the area and the stakeholders, what would happen if somebody moved out? Would anybody notice? So if you look at some of the serious stakeholders in the area, you look at Diageo, who are downsizing, moving a lot of the operation to Selbridge. You look at Frawley's, who left last year. You look along the road and you see Farrow and Ball, and you see the people who use Farrow and Ball, are they the people who also drink in Cafe Nero? Now, I know there's a certain element of social stereotyping, but what happens to the people who buy paint in Farrow and Ball? Do they go into Chadwick's? The people in Chadwick's go into Cafe Nero. When you start to look at those things and you look at the integration in the area that we're in, how do you sustain the society that we're here? So if everybody moves out and we just build apartments to change that, then what's going to happen in those apartments, and why would anybody want to live in them? And of course, the big question that's unanswered is, what happens if NCAD moves out? And that question has been asked, and it's been asked a couple of times.
Okay, so we've had about the